aura with him. Hearing their conversation, the rest of their classmates also decide to join, because when will they have lunch with their already famous prefect? Sam, delighted at this reaction from those around him, agrees for them to all go together. But can everything in his life be so simple? As soon as he decided to go to lunch with the team, students entered the classroom, looking for him with clearly not very good intentions. Having found Sam, the leader of this gang introduces himself as a third-year speed class named Jeffrey Sifrin. Mr. Levinson wants, so why did they need him? To which Jeffrey declares that he wants to fight him. The third-year student tries to explain that they are not like Dan Schneid and they do not want enmity, but Sam does not believe their words. He replies that they started it all for the sake of revenge. Other students who came with Jeffrey claim that they have nothing to do with that identical person, because Dan was too self-confident and wanted to become famous. Mr. Sifrin decides to get straight to the point. The Dragon and Tigers rankings are coming up soon, and since Sam's fighting abilities are very unusual, they want to fight against him to hone their fighting skills. Having heard this, the main character doesn't even really know whether to tense up or relax. It turns out that the students are preparing for the ranking of Tigers and Dragons. Jeffrey invites him to fight in the training building. If the opponent is worried about safety, they can also ask the teacher on duty to be the judge. They are even willing to offer him money. Sam suspects that they have already prepared the money from the very beginning, but, despite all the persuasion, he refuses. He simply doesn't want to waste his precious time on this and is getting ready to leave. Seeing their opponent leave, they throw their last trump card at the students and offer him an E-rank capsule. They notice that Sam has stopped at the entrance and begin to raise the stakes, offering even more capsules for each of his exits. Turning to them, the hero clarifies whether he will receive the capsule if he loses, and the whole gang gives him a positive answer. As a result, they will move into the fourth hall of the combat training building. All the students admire the technological equipment of this room. The observing teacher warns that this is just practice and tells the students not to hurt each other. He especially addresses Sam, warning him not to turn out like last time. Mr. Levins wants to know who will start first, and Jeffrey volunteers to be first. The third-year student turns to his comrades and asks them to carefully watch their battle and then sum up the results. The fight begins, and Jeffrey warns that he will now begin to attack. Sam gives him advice not to attack with all his might at once. Mr. Sifrin rushes into battle, shouting that people of the Transcendent type must always attack with all their might. The companion says that they studied the video of the fight with Dan, and the hidden type should keep his distance during the fight, so in the fight against Sam, he should close the distance as quickly as possible. Jeffrey mentions that he noticed that during the fight with Dan, Sam would direct spiritual cones in special trajectories to make the enemy jump up. The third-year student gathers strength, and reducing the distance as much as possible, tries to strike the enemy and crashes into a spiritual wall. The enemy admires Sam's spiritual skills, but believes that in the face of absolute power, any tricks are ineffective. Jeffrey strikes again and his fist begins to penetrate the enemy's defense. He was ready to rejoice at his incredible strength, but his fist again hit the barrier. The young man doesn't understand where he came from. Did Sam really create two barriers so that he wouldn't notice it? The main character stands happy, because having such tactics is in the order of things. Have such tactics to compensate for your weaknesses. Jeffrey is trying to restore his arm. He has the complete feeling that the barrier was made of stone. The observer comes up and examines his injury, and advises that if there is no fracture, apply ice and use ointment, and otherwise, give yourself an injection and the hand will heal in 2 days. But the young man does not care. He wants to know whether he can continue the fight. But the teacher raises and announces that Sam Levins won this fight. The next round begins and one confident young man is called up. A couple of minutes later, he was holding his chest and lying on the floor while Sam was declared the winner. Next, the third-year student's comrade in arms was defeated. Mr. Levins was again on strike. Well, the last of the company fell under attack and also ended up losing on the bench. As a result, Jeffrey gives Sam a box with the treasured capsules and thanks him for the experience gained, offering to practice some more. The main character looks after the departing senior students and thinks that they are good guys, and he earned quite a lot, but he could kill time sitting in the laboratory. And then it dawns on him that he forgot to clean the laboratory. He starts running and ends up even overtaking a group of his classmates who were watching his fight. As a result, he managed to clean the laboratory. He filled in all the necessary solutions, and all of today's tasks were completed. But suddenly he smells a distinct smell of blood coming from the office at the end of the corridor. Does someone really want to fight him again? He throws the canister aside and rushes straight into the office. Looking pretty shabby, Annabelle admits that Sam is a very good cook. The young man admits that as soon as he smelled blood, he thought that someone had gotten in here, and he was also worried about where the professor had been all these days. In addition, he notices that the girl is very badly wounded, and he continues to be bothered by the question of what happened to her hand. Annabelle notices his curiosity and decides to show him what she was doing and why her fingers did what they did. The girl already knew that he would ask her about it, so it was time to start the experiment. Walking along the long corridor, she notices that if he had shirked less, he would have already found this place. Annabelle leads him to a huge flask where a complete copy of it floats unconscious. Sam slowly realizes that the teacher could use this clone for treatment. He directly decides to ask the teacher this question, and she confirms his guesses, adding that not all of these clones are needed for treatment, but also for research purposes. The professor says that in addition to her clones, there are also clones of Sam. Mr. Levins doesn't understand when they manage to take his DNA, but everything turns out to be as simple as shelling pears. They took him when he received his pass. Annabelle asks him to deploy modules numbered 10 and 50 in the large hall. They will soon begin the experiment. Sam obediently agrees to everything, and the teacher decides to warn him not to be too surprised by the presence of 40 of his clones. The professor tries to explain to the young man in as much detail as possible about how the remote control works and what to do in case of an emergency. The main character finally saw the army of his clones, and this made him feel uneasy. In addition, it seems to him that cloning technology is not very popular now. Annabelle explains that there are only 2 cloning laboratories in the world, and one of them is here. The main character is wondering where their institute gets such rare resources and whether it is worth spending these resources on it. Sam wants to somehow repay all this, even if it is just an experiment. The professor asks him a question whether he has heard about the New Gene People project. Their number 14 institute is also a branch called FAD. They mainly do some genetic research, although they have a lot of research results. Some of them, no one has been able to surpass, and there are also people who hate their research results. And now the professor gives Sam the choice to decide whether he will join their direction or not. The young man is unconditionally for this idea because then his future will be more exciting, and there are advantages that he will not find anywhere else. Since the hero agreed, Annabelle shows him the Queen Bee, which is capable of controlling tens of thousands of workers, has spiritual power. Moreover, it is of great value, and now her head is in front of them. Scientists wanted to inject the spiritual gene data of the Queen Bee into the experimental body to obtain enhanced gene mutations, with the possibility of obtaining the Queen Bee skill. Mental control, the ability of the Queen Bee to control tens of thousands of worker bees. The chain of mental control is the ability to remotely control worker bees. Mental flagellation, where the Queen Bee uses this to attack and even kill worker bees, and is also the only offensive ability. But this method is too simple and crude, so the probability of genetic rejection is more than 90%. Sam now understands why so many clones are needed, and the professor repeats whether he wants to try to participate. Annabelle advises him to remember that even though he enters the clone's body, all the pain he experiences will not be alleviated even by half. The young man agrees with everything, and the teacher orders him to go through and sit in a chair. She further says that this device will connect him with the clones. When she says the word start, he will release all his spiritual power and transfer his consciousness into the clone. Sam agrees, and Annabelle presses the lever. The experiment begins. Suddenly, a half-naked clone of Sam falls out of one of the flasks onto the ground. The professor tries to contact him to find out how he is feeling, if there is discomfort or loss of control. The young man replies that everything is fine. He does not experience any discomfort, and moreover, freely controls his body. Annabelle orders him to go to a place under the glass window of the control room, where there is a through hole. He must stick his hand there when he is ready to inject. At the same time, the girl begins to record that experiment number 01 with the Black Crown Queen Bee has begun. Now the injection stage is underway. The observation time is 30 seconds. Sam had already taken the injection by this time and was now starting to feel a little sleepy, which he immediately reported to the professor. To his surprise, all his senses stopped working at once. His vision went dark, and he found himself lying on the floor. The recording continues. Miss Prince reports that brain death occurred during experiment 01. 10 seconds have passed. She asks the original what the body felt during death, but he could only remember a headache. Annabelle decides to begin the second experiment. Another clone comes out, unaware of what executions await his new body. Sometime later, the floor of the research laboratory was littered with the bodies of Sam's clones due to failed experiments. Annabelle decides to try the experiment one last time. They open one of the flasks again, administer the injection. The teacher wants to figure out what is wrong in their research, but to her surprise, the last clone remained alive and they succeeded. Mr. Levins, sighing heavily, takes off his helmet and tries to rise from his chair. Miss Prince runs up to him and tries to find out how he feels. Staggering, Sam approaches her and, unable to resist, falls into her arms, saying that his spiritual power feels like it has increased by at least 25%. The professor wants to know about his abilities, whether he has acquired any powers. And she was right. The young man actually received 2 new abilities. One of them is a chain of mental control, and much to the surprise of the teacher, a mental whip. Annabelle grabs her charge by the scruff of the neck and rushes him to try out new skills, while Sam just wants to rest and eat something to recuperate. His professor was not a monster, so she fed the student. Sam admits that the experiment was too tedious. The girl praises him. He achieved excellent results with less than 40 clones. At this moment, a robot assistant flies into the room and offers Annabelle a glass of water. At the same time, pointing out that she needs to pay attention, because when Sam saw her clone, his pupils and heartbeat changed dramatically. He ends this monologue with the assumption that Mr. Levins is most likely a bad person. Sam tries to explain everything, but Annabelle interrupts him and says that this is Flaber, a special supercomputer at their research institute. He couldn't see Flaber before because he has an unhealthy interest in secret observations. Sam now has only good thoughts in his head. In addition to 2 cloning devices, he also has his own artificial intelligence. Apparently, it's good that he entered the Institute of Research Institute number 14. Flaber begins to shout that he feels the young man's heartbeat quickening, and perhaps he is thinking about something bad. And the main character is no longer so happy about this piece of iron, and is already ready to call this pile of metal a mentally retarded intellect. Annabelle just sighs and decides that if Sam has the strength to argue with Flaber, then they will continue the experiment. The girl also reports that from now on he receives special privileges, second only to her own and some teachers. They stand opposite each other, and the professor orders the young man to attack her. Sam concentrates, and to everyone's surprise, he manages to pull out a mental whip. It almost hits the professor. Annabelle orders to do this again, because today is the first time erudition received this skill, so they must test the combat effectiveness of the skill on her. The young man tries to strike again with the whip, but as the teacher notes, he does not have enough power, because he still has less spiritual strength than she does, so attacking below the neck is useless, but it may work on others. She notices that he used very little spiritual power. With experience, he would be able to use 1/10 or even half of that spiritual power at a time to make the attack powerful. For now, they stop there, and Sam wilts, having failed to impress Annabelle. The girl comes up to him and says that his results are not bad, and calls him their genetic miracle, the only one who acquired 2 skills at once. Everyone else, including the founders, only acquired 1 skill each. Annabelle advises Sam to rest while she writes the report. If they can identify the basic gene center, the mental control circuits, then the fruits of their class will increase, but so far they are lacking. The young man himself should know how difficult it is for the erudition class to train, and the liquid of the black crown queen bee can help them with this. Besides, the corpse of the queen bee is extremely difficult to get, so the professor does not know when they will be able to recruit new volunteers. Flaber expresses his dissatisfaction because Annabelle said that Research Institute number 14 was just her and Sam, forgetting to mention him. The girl apologizes to the artificial intelligence and approaches the young man to give him a gift for his work. Having opened the box, he cannot understand what it is, and at first assumes that he was given a keychain. Having given a little hint to his student, Sam finally understands that there is a flying sword in front of him. He had only seen this in films before. Since the hero received a chain of mental control, according to Annabelle, he can easily control the sword and even offers to try it out. The young man, full of determination, agrees to another small experiment. He tries to carefully lift the knife into the air and already feels that it takes a lot of strength. Annabelle calms him down, saying that in the end, he will gradually get used to it. She suggests that the theoretical distance of mental control could be up to 500 kilometers, but with his current spiritual strength, he could try 100 meters first. Sam tries and gradually succeeds in holding the sword in the air and sending it further and further. He has already reached a distance of almost 100 meters. The teacher now advises him to try to return the sword in the same condition. The sword suddenly turns back and lands next to its new owner. Annabelle was a little scared by his maneuver and tells him not to act rashly, and after returning to train, better control, especially the moments associated with acceleration, deceleration, and turns. Suddenly, Miss Prince received a call on her mobile phone, and she answered the call instantly, ending the call. The girl calls Sam with her, because someone is waiting for them. Walking along the corridor and continuing to practice with the sword at the same time, the hero is curious why the professor has such a serious face and who the caller could be. They come to the office of Deputy Rector Helia Schaffer. Annabelle assumes that he didn't just invite them to have tea here. He replies that she should know that this applies to last time. The professor repeats that Helia should know that a new employee has appeared at their research institute number 14. The entire warehouse is full, and there are no places left. The deputy replies that he immediately felt Sam's aura. I can't even believe that he is a freshman, and since she is done with him, then she should allow other university employees to use the modules. Annabelle refuses, because the next step will be the full development of Sam's clone for further medical examinations. There is also long-term research that also needs to be carried out. Helia still begs to allocate at least one module. This begins to bother Miss Prince, and she threatens that if the teacher mentions it again, then the conversation will go differently. The man states that she still has no choice because she should know the rules and regulations of the university. Her research has not been fruitful, and if she does not want to give them the cloning equipment, then something may happen to the funding of her research. Annabelle wants to know how much they want to cut the budget, and Helia reports that at the moment, they want to cut funding by 80%. It turns out that many have long wanted to use this laboratory, including military structures. Helia promises to contact Annabelle and advises her not to worry. Sam, walking out the door with the teacher, wants to know how much money the institute needs to operate normally during the year. In the deputy's memory, funding for this institute has never been less than $50 million a year. The young man wants to know if it was because of him that they began to put pressure on the professor. Helia, patting him on the shoulder, declares that he is just the reason and nothing more. Their arms are getting longer and longer, and even the founder's idea of cloning attracted their attention. Previously, teacher Annabelle did not work alone. Some left, and some betrayed them. Helia wishes Sam to grow up quickly and help his beloved professor. The protagonist wonders how he can help her, but the deputy says that there are many ways to help, such as new research and performance evaluation, but there is a more direct and effective method. And by this effective method, he means the ranking of dragons and tigers, the 10 best students who were at the beginning of the ranking. If a freshman gets into the general list, then this will be recognition of the contribution of their research institute. Annabelle, leaving the office, notices that only Sam remains, and having learned that Helium's teacher has left, recommends that the hero go train using a flying sword, while not forgetting about his duties in cleaning the laboratory and cultivation warehouse. Sam wants to know what she will do next. The professor reveals that she will complete several tasks in order to receive funding. Now, the proposal about raiding the dragon and tigers did not leave the hero's head. He needed to think and choose the appropriate tactics. While thinking about this out loud, he did not notice how Sasha approached him, and now he wanted to know what tactics were being discussed. He called Sam, but he didn't hear him, and when his friend approached, he heard him muttering something about tactics and began to think that these were his Don Juan tricks again. The hero asks if his friend has a desire to train. Sasha thinks this is funny, because he ranks 89th in the ranking of sophomores, so it will not be easy to defeat him. Noticing the grin on Sam's face, his comrade explodes and says that luckily for him, he was just heading to the battle room, and now he will show what he is capable of. Entering the hall, they notice a girl who was clearly not happy with their appearance. Sasha brings Sam closer to her and introduces her as her girlfriend named Sierra Kantz. She immediately says not to call her anything, she is a sophomore. Sierra doesn't understand why he came here. He was also late. Sasha begins to make excuses that he met a friend who wants to spar. The girl assumes that a freshman is strong enough if he trains with someone who is older. Her friend reminds him of that video with Dan and says that it was Sam's work. Sierra calls the young man a newly hatched chicken who was able to defeat a strong opponent. Having moved away from the guys, she takes out brass knuckles from her skirt pocket and says that she wants to fight with this chicken. This confuses Sam a little. He is not particularly eager to fight with his friend's girlfriend, and Sasha, meanwhile, shouts out that she took 32nd place among the sophomores and asks not to overdo it. Sierra asks the enemy to get ready and they take their positions. The protagonist commands that he is ready and she can begin. The girl gathers her strength and jumps into the air as Sam creates many spiritual shields around himself. The lady deftly breaks through all the shields with her weapon, taking the young man by surprise. He could never have expected her to be capable of such a thing. Having landed, she punches her fist through the stone floor where Sam stood a second ago. He managed to jump back. A rapid thought process begins in the hero's head. Is it really the strength of the sophomore rating, the speed of strength, and even the skills that are completely different from those of Dan Schneid, Jeffrey Sifrin, and others? It seems that using spiritual power alone is not suitable against senior students. He would also really like to experiment with controlling the mental chain, but now he has nothing at hand, and the flying sword is too dangerous, so there is only one thing left. In his moments of thought, Sierra attacks again, trying once again to break the enemy's shield. Sam warns that now he will be forced to offend her. The girl only laughs at him and again breaks through his defense. She herself is looking forward to what kind of technique he can use in this state. To her surprise, the young man decides to use a mental whip against her. Hitting her with it, he immediately knocked out Sierra. Sasha immediately runs up to her and tries to find out if she needs to take her to the doctor. Raising her head, the girl and the guys fall into a stupor. Sierra looks as if she doesn't understand where she is and what's happening to her. Sam could not even imagine that the mental whip would be so strong. He is frightened by the facial expressions of his defeated rival. The young man tries to apologize to Sasha, complaining that he has not yet understood this technique so well, but his friend interrupts him mid-sentence. He says that the current generation of transcendental types become stronger by being injured, so he does not consider them to be at fault. Sam understands that there is nothing more for him to do here and wants to leave, and his friend strangely begins to urge him on, saying that he will take care of Sierra himself. Glancing behind him, the main character sees the sophomore licking his lips maliciously. He understands with horror why Sasha allowed him to knock her out. This guy used such a vile method to make the girl defenseless. As soon as he turned away again to walk away from here, he heard the voice of Sierra, who ordered him to stand and told Sasha not to let the young man leave. Hearing this, Sam stopped. The girl told him to wait, because she had one thing to do with him. The main character, confused, wants to find out what they need and hopes that Sierra feels better. She hands him the phone and offers him a look at the match between the students of the Indian Federation and the Star Regions of Korea. He sees how the screen shows a fierce battle. The representative of Korea is throwing something like spiritual cones, and the Indian is dodging them. But it was not to be. The enemy took out a saber and, closing the distance as quickly as possible, cut the enemy's neck. A team of doctors immediately runs out onto the field, hoping to save the competitor. Sierra wants to know after watching this fight if Sam felt something. While the hero clearly did not understand anything, what kind of match it was, why the participants were so cruel. Sasha decides to clarify that in a real battle such tricks are allowed. In fact, during dragon and tiger competitions, sometimes deaths occur. The risks are very high. The young man thinks that the participant from India deliberately hurt his opponent. Sierra reveals that this man's name is Azari. He is extremely talented and is in the top 10 in the dragon and tigers ranking among sophomores. Recently, universities have begun exchanging students. Last time, a member of the Federation eliminated 6 second-year students. Their next destination will be their Kier University. The match will be held here, which means that the students participating in the exchange will also be selected from the second year. Sam does not understand what they are getting at. He is a first year and cannot help them. Sierra guesses that he must have noticed that the student from the Korean areas just froze in place for a while, and doesn't he think it was the same with her? Sam finally realizes that she might mean that Asari also has mental attacks. The girl continues to say that mental skills are very rare and unusual, so it is difficult to defend against them. According to her teacher, there are only two ways to cope with a mental attack. The first is to open a chain of genetic abilities to enhance spiritual strength or mental protection, but the second method is much simpler. This is hardening, so to speak, mental fortitude. The more mental damage she receives, the more resilient she will become. Then she will not be knocked down after the first attack, like today. And so she wants to use Sam's ability to strengthen her ability to resist mental attacks. At the same time, he can hone his skills on her. No matter how cruel it is, he really lacks practical experience now, and in the end, he agrees to her proposal. Sierra is so happy with his agreement that she immediately offers to beat her and Sasha right now, but the guys are against it. First, it's better to let her rest now. Watching how Sasha awkwardly tries to offer the girl his help, and she is too proud and therefore barely hobbles towards the exit, refusing his services, Sam notices that this is a pair of boots. The young man understands that he needs to think about an offensive attack, and of course gain practical experience. Walking along one of the buildings, Liam doesn't even pay attention to the girls who don't take their eyes off him and whisper about how cool he is. But he's suddenly attracted by a familiar voice. Sam happily greets him. The hero immediately rushes to tell him that he has read all the books he gave him, but now many questions have accumulated in his head. But Liam asks him to slow down, because at the moment he is in a hurry, Sam wonders where his neighbor really needs to go. A senior student is scheduled to give a lecture on ancient martial arts, and upon hearing this, a neighbor suddenly blocks his way and demands to take him with him. But Liam explains that if the student does not have an invitation, then he needs a recommendation. This only further stimulates the freshman's interest, and he promises that if a friend takes him to this lesson, he will clean for 2 weeks. And such a neat guy like Liam understandably could not refuse such an offer and in the end agrees to take Sam with him. They got to the main building by airmobile and Mr. Levins wondered how much it cost. Liam replies that it's not that expensive, something around $2 million. Sam reasons that it is good to have a rich family, his neighbor supports him, he himself undoubtedly comes from a rich family, but he earned all this himself. Liam tries to explain to the freshman that he must understand that times have changed. They are genetically modified people at the pinnacle of evolution. For ordinary people, 1 or 2 million is an exorbitant price, but for them, it is a reward for 1 or 2 tasks. Obviously, the difficulties and dangers of a mission are also unimaginable for ordinary people, but when you are strong and meet the requirements of the university, you can also complete these tasks. Entering the classroom, Liam continues to talk about the fact that today Seth Rogen, vice chairman of the Association of Ancient Gene Martial Arts, is giving a closed lecture, and since Sam wants to dispel his doubts, he should first listen to the lecture, and then they will see if he understood something. While standing looking for a seat, a girl notices a local idol and willingly calls him over, saying that she has saved a place for him. She says that she came here at 5 o'clock in the morning and managed to take the 2 best places. Liam thanks her and invites her to sit in Sam's reserved seat. The young man immediately understands that this is a very bad idea, noticing the look of the person in love. Liam sees that his friend does not want to sit in this place and offers to sit in the other remaining free ones. Sam decides to sit down in the place reserved for Liam. The idol asks the girl to choose where he will sit, either next to Sam or on the opposite row. The lover will especially allow Liam to sit with a guy than with those hungry wolves from the neighboring rows. This is what she did, giving way to him and sitting down in his prepared row. Sam managed to sweat all over from the exertion. This girl, in his opinion, simply has a murderous aura. He decides to ask his neighbor why he refuses, because everyone dreams of being in his place, but Liam only throws out the phrase that he won't understand him. Finally, Seth Rogen comes to the podium. He says that everyone who has gathered here today already has an understanding of ancient genetic martial arts, so he will not talk about these well-known things. Liam glances briefly at his neighbor and cannot understand when he already managed to take out a notebook and began to write down. The lecturer announces that today they will be discussing energy fields. In fact, they prefer to call them internal chi or true ki. Seth invites interested students to try what he just talked about right now. After all, the secrets of cultivating the energy field of ancient Jin martial arts are not suitable for everyone. The student must act based on his capabilities. So if someone present feels ki, he can press the button under the armrest of the seat. Sam questions Liam, and it turns out that this is the main technique. He wonders how long it took his neighbor to feel the ki. Liam rolls his eyes and doesn't want to compare himself to his neighbor because he's a genius and managed to master this technique in an hour, at which time Sam begins to feel something. Noticing this, the senior student does not hold back. He wants to know if Mr. Levins felt something and receives a positive answer. The inspectors approach their places. Since Liam pressed the button, the employees look at Sam and do not believe that in 15 minutes he was able to feel something. Noticing Mr. Asker sitting nearby, they lower their irritated tone and find out that it was he who pressed the button, and he has complete confidence in his neighbor. Liam suggests approaching the venerable Mr. Rogan and seeing everything with his own eyes. Lecturer Seth at that time was sitting calmly in his rocking chair and listening to music. The attendant brought the young people and briefly outlined the situation to him. Mr. Rogan is intrigued by this news and asks Sam to let him see it so that the young man can feel the ki as he did then. The main character agrees, and in just a couple of seconds he was able to feel that same chi, which greatly surprised the old man. He asks Liam if he taught this young guy. The older student replies that no, he was just studying his books. Old man Rogan rejoices when he hears this news and calls Sam a good seedling. Seth approaches the young man and offers to join their association of ancient martial arts. The main character apologizes and refuses him, since he is already a member of a school called Jin Miracle. Having heard this news and comparing all the facts, the old man suggests that if within 7 days Sam can open the place where vital forces are concentrated and condense a mass of internal qi. In this case, Seth will make an exception and personally take on his training. The guys couldn't believe their ears when they heard these words. Leaving the classroom, Liam says that he could not even imagine that his freshman neighbor would learn so much today. Sam thanks him and says that this is all only thanks to his help. The main character's watch receives an alarming call from Sasha. Annabelle did not answer his calls, and he also recommends reading the news quickly if he is not aware of what happened. A bacchanalia is happening in popular queries. The first of the queries comes out with news about a hot woman professor who is being challenged by a man named Hiroji from the Indian Federation. Sam does not understand what is happening. He immediately rushes to look for Annabelle and finds her in the training laboratory. The professor doesn't understand why he visited her at noon. Does he really have something to do with her? Sam immediately begins to tell what he saw in the search engine queries, and Annabelle was already aware of this. They are trying to provoke her, and the students are very worried about her. The young man wants to know how the teacher is going to respond to this. He suggests that she take a photo of her hand and send it to Hiroji. After getting comfortable, Annabelle asks if Sam wants to make her admit defeat and bow her head. The young man tries to say that he didn't mean that. The teacher, of course, herself understands that he's just worried about her. She says that this time she suffered at the hands of Hiroji. Their school also studies mental attacks, but Hiroji cannot capture the Black Crown Queen alone, so he resorted to dirty methods, caught the teacher by surprise, and when she had no strength left after killing the queen, and now challenges her when she is injured. But Sam reminded her that she had to teach him a lesson. The main character had never seen such a look from the professor before. This time she was really angry. Sam immediately promises that as soon as he gets such an opportunity, he will definitely hit this Hiroji in the neck so that he will not say anything more about her. Her words made her feel better in her heart, but for now she can only rub her eyes and wait. But she must remind her student that kindness to the enemy is, first of all, cruelty to oneself. After leaving the laboratory, Sam thought about this whole situation and the professor's words. And when Sasha and his friend approached him in time, Mr. Levins was just about to disturb his friend. Sasha is happy about his friend's requests, but now wants to introduce his friend named Christopher Kai. He provides some specialized goods for students at their university. Sam and Christopher shake hands, and the new acquaintance notes that Sam's name is already like a clap of thunder at their university. And Christopher decides that it's better to say less and do more. He takes Mr. Levin's order out of his pocket. It turns out to be a whole bundle of metal balls. Now that Sam has this, he won't be afraid to remain unarmed if his flying sword is taken away from him. Just as he wanted to reach out for payment, Christopher decided to find out if the young man was really going to participate in ranking matches. Hearing that it is true, the merchant says that he has a good idea. Sam will quickly and easily solve his problem, but it will require a small expense. The whole trio sent the dragon and tigers into the battle arena of the rating matches. At this time, fierce battles are already taking place there. 2 young men are fighting in the ring. A couple more powerful moves and a new winner is declared. Christopher notices how Sam looks at everything with admiration and understands that the guy is seeing such a sight for the first time. He takes the banner and says that he thinks Mr. Levin's name will appear on it soon. Taking the sign, Christopher begins to climb up the stairs. People see him come to the top of one of the arenas and recognize him as one of the local merchants. A photo of Sam appears on a small screen, and next to it there is information that he is challenging the second-year students of the Dragons and Tigers ranking. The crowd is clearly not happy with this trick. They are annoyed by the self-confident first year. As expected from a professional businessman, getting attention by using viewers' hatred is quite clever. Sam tells Sasha that he will go then, and his friend supports him and says that he has already prepared. The young man enters the arena where Christopher stands with a sign and calls on the sophomores to fight him. The first person to come appears. He enters the arena with a baseball bat and hands Christopher an E-rank capsule as an entry fee. Tolka applauds the emerging sophomore named Kamish. They sincerely wish him victory. He takes 94th place in the ranking, and now the rivals meet and the fight begins. Sam watches closely as his opponent begins to accelerate to hit him. But timely released metal balls cool Hamish's ardor and knock him down. He approaches the loser and says that he could not imagine what level the second-year students were at. Everyone in the stands heard his derogatory words about the second year. A group of students are discussing what a stupid kid he is, and in any case, he has nothing to do with either the third or fourth years. One of the students turns to the leader of their community, Killian Ferb, to find out what the second-year Tigers should do about it now. Kamish returns to the podium in disgrace until his friends understand how the first year defeated their comrade with one blow. He explains that he was not careful, and these balls are faster than bullets, and the angle of attack is very strange. Kamish could have died. The young man admits that he is not sure that he can beat him again and warns everyone to be careful. People start talking about whether someone else will come out. Now the person must be rated higher than Hamish. Hearing these conversations in the crowd, Christopher has a clever idea. He takes the loudspeaker and announces that with each subsequent section, the reward in the form of E-rank capsules will only increase. A student named Heinrich nevertheless decides to enter the arena. He has 29th place in the ranking. He tells Sam that he used to underestimate him, but now he realizes that he is worthy and will fight him. Having taken a fighting stance, the enemy still wonders if Mr. Levinson needs rest. Sam gives a negative answer, which leads Heinrich to think that his opponent did not spend much spiritual strength in the last fight. The battle began and a couple of charges of balls were immediately launched at the enemy. He finds it incredible to control them, but that is why it is easier for him to defend. Heinrich decides that he needs to find the right moment and attack him when his controllable range is reduced. He skillfully hits each ball, knocking them back. Manipulating an object using mental force means that a single connection is established between the object and the manipulator. And as soon as the object is attacked, the spiritual force begins to devour its owner. Having understood all this, Henry was already rushing towards the enemy, tasting the feeling of his victory. But as soon as he approached Sam, he dodged his attack and smiled and said that the fight was over. Using a mental whip, he knocked out his opponent. Looking at this battle scene, all the spectators in the hall froze in silent shock. Killian, seeing this, wishes that this guy had shown up 10 days ago. He would have paid him to use mental skills on him to increase his stamina. One of the henchmen jumps up and asks the leader what will happen next. At this rate, Sam will disgrace the entire second year. Killian orders him to go and fight. He is just up to the task. They will not let the first year think that there are no strong students in the second year. The comrade agrees and immediately soars into the air, hurrying to overtake other comers. Sasha, looking from the podium, points out to Sierra that Killian actually sent Brad to fight. The girl notices that Sam is behaving quite provocatively. Meanwhile, Sam was mourning the loss of his 2 expensive balloons and was wondering whether he should ask for compensation for them. Suddenly, an E-rank capsule flies into his hand, which means that a new opponent is on the scene. He introduces himself as a sophomore named Brad and says that he is ranked 7th. Reaching into his quiver for an arrow, he says he hopes for a good fight. Noticing that his opponent is an archer, Sam tenses up a little. The long-range attack is a hidden-type sworn enemy, but distance is very important for an archer. This arena is unsightly for him. It looks like the battle will be difficult. And as he expected, Brad asks him to change the arena, since it will be inconvenient for him to fight in this one, and Sam agrees to this condition. Everyone is excited about this battle. Many are looking for better places to capture it. The desired arena was found and the battle began, Brad immediately trying to gain as much distance between them as possible. There is also a live broadcast of this fight in the rector's office. Adore wants to know the name of this interesting student who challenged the second-year students. Helia tells him that this student's name is Sam Levins. He is a first-year student in the erudition class. Professor Annabelle is his supervisor. Adore wonders if they found a suitable candidate for the enhancement experiments. Helia replies that if they had not, he would not have mastered the mental whip in such a short period of time. The rector thinks that the mental whip is a sign that the old businessmen have decided to raise new geniuses for themselves. He sees that this boy is special. None of them did anything like that in their time. Now the youth have become more resourceful. Even quite capable students have appeared in the erudition class. Helia fears that after this battle, even E-rank capsules will not help him recover. Adore says they shouldn't jump to conclusions just yet. In the laboratory, meanwhile, Annabelle was also watching the progress of events in the arena. Even Flaber decided to stick to the screen. She also noticed that the enemy would be an archer and understood how truly difficult a challenge it would be. Wanting to tighten the bow, Brad asks his opponent if he feels comfortable in the new arena. He notes that this arena really suits his opponent more than himself. Killian decides to tell both of them not to overdo it and orders Brad to take the blunt arrows. He says that he is not interested in how strong Sam is. The main thing for him is that he does not harm Brad. Tomorrow he has an important fight with students from other universities. These speeches confuse Brad a little. He tells the leader that he is confident in his abilities. Sam promises that he will try not to hurt his opponent too much. Then Sasha decides to enter the arena, and he says that long distance is indeed the sworn enemy of the hidden type, but by asking not to hurt Brad, Killian is already forcing him to admit defeat. The leader's argument becomes the blunt arrows that his comrade will use. Sasha is not happy with this argumentation. He found something to compare, he put pressure on one and forced the other to hold back. They continue to argue further, having already left the arena. The opponents are ordered to get ready, and finally the long-awaited battle has begun. Finding himself almost under the dome of the arena, Brad prepares to fire one of his arrows. But in contrast to it, Sam has already created several spiritual shields, one of which has already been attacked and broken into fragments. Even despite the rubber arrows, the energy of the flight is still strong. At this rate, he is afraid that he will not be able to cope. The arrow still penetrates all his levels of defense, and Sam has to quickly dodge it. Those caught on video don't understand why the freshman doesn't use his mental attacks, but one girl suggests that they might just be learning about each other. Brad tests Sam's reaction time to determine the most appropriate position, and Sam is trying to grasp the rate of fire and the strength of the enemy's attack as much as possible. It is worth recognizing that both have very developed tactical thinking. Mr. Levins finally begins to attack and releases the balls. He is able to control them even at a distance of 20 meters. Brad thinks that he needs to increase the distance again and tries to find the distance while dodging the enemy's attacks. Carrying out a series of attacks, Sam forces his opponent to lift himself higher and higher. Brad suspects that his enemy is trying to drive him into a dead end, but what he may not know is that all transcendental archers must be able to fight in the air. Sam directs his guided balls at the fired arrows, but for some reason none of them hit the arrow. He cannot understand how this happened, since he knows how to control silver balls well. The hero understands that it is too late to dodge, and the last thing he can do is take cover under the shields and block the attack. The arrow was launched with such force that it was able to penetrate all 3 spiritual shields. Sam's friends can't believe their eyes when they see this sight. The main character lies motionless in the arena. He clearly did not expect such a strong attack. The TV presenter tells her partner that everyone is asking about stopping the fight live. But instead, the girl addresses people live, calling them idiots. She asks them to forget about this fight. Even the 4th-year students did not have time to notice anything. This time, Sam suffered from a lack of combat experience. No matter how accurately he chooses the trajectory, there will be subtle deviations when he hits. Brad used a quick attack to fire 3 arrows in quick succession. This tactic was to have the first 2 arrows hit Sam's spirit power, thereby causing his 3rd ball to deflect slightly and use it as a breakout. In fact, in the last battle, Heinrich actually hit Mr. Levin's spiritual power. Obviously, the freshman was not aware of this and therefore lost. But to everyone's surprise, everyone notices Sam getting to his feet, wondering if he can continue the fight. Everyone is wondering why he is holding his ribs with his hands. Didn't an arrow hit him in the shoulder? To which another commentator says that it is worth paying attention to the shields that Sam created. He specifically used an arc-shaped shield, which is a tricky trick, so he was hit in the ribs. This time, Sam realizes that he was inattentive and did not expect the enemy to undertake such tactics. However, this style of aerial combat must be a huge strain on him. Brad is amazed that his opponent was able to get up. He underestimated him. Sam sees that the enemy already wants to end the battle as soon as possible, so he will try to disarm him again. But his opponent is also not asleep and has already fired several of his arrows one after another. Everyone again glued their eyes to their monitor screens to find out who the winner would be in the end. No one knows what trump cards both sides have in store, but now the fight is already heating up. And if Brad is still thinking about saving his energy for tomorrow's exchange match, then it can be said that he is a complete idiot. Now victory belongs to the one who can be the first to break the deadlock and use his trump card. Otherwise, this battle will come down to a war of attrition, and then Brad will most likely be defeated due to the number of arrows. The enemy himself understands all this, but in front of him now is truly a real monster. This freshman has a huge amount of spiritual power and maintains offensive and defensive postures at the same time. He doesn't even know where to start looking for a gap. He can use his trump card, but it all depends on whether Brad can recover before tomorrow's fight, and this will only hinder the team. To his surprise, the balls are already reaching him, and this is a distance of at least 30 meters from the arena. Sam at this time realizes that he has almost got him. Now all the enemy's attention is focused on the distance of his attack, and the next step will be to deal a fatal blow to the enemy. He starts shouting to Brad that distance shouldn't bother him. These words distract the opponent, and he does not notice how a ball flew from the side and injured his hand, in which he was holding a bow. Brad loses his balance and begins to fall from a bird's eye view. Sam has already rushed to catch his enemy, but fortunately, Killian manages to catch him. The leader turns to the enemy and menacingly says that he asked not to hurt Brad. Help from Sam arrives at the arena, and Sasha immediately tries to intervene, saying that their comrade in arms was aiming at the bowstring, and Brad was simply unlucky. The whole gang of sophomores has arrived and is helping their friend up. The commentators themselves did not really have time to understand anything, just like the audience. Brad tells Killian that the tendon on the back of his arm is completely torn. One of his comrades begins to scold Sam, saying that he has no sense of collective honor, and that their comrade was needed for tomorrow's fight with students from the Indian Federation. Sasha replies that their own weakness is to blame for this. He believes that Sam acted more than humanely. Brad admits that he was confused by the balls, and at the same time he wanted to increase the attack distance. The young man did not expect an attack at that moment. Sasha again enters into controversy, saying that even their comrade in arms admitted that he did everything he could, and again they begin to blurt out the same fact that Brad was wounded. Sam stops his friend, defiantly turning his head until his friend understands what's going on. And just when the sophomore thought that his words had finally reached these fools, a flying sword appeared near his neck. Mr. Levins, tired of these accusations, took serious measures. Finally, Killian commands his friends that they've had enough of this. He orders Dave to take Brad to the medical center instead of this altercation, so that he can undergo ultra-precise surgery to stitch the tendons together. Now the leader decided to ask Sam about his injuries. It turns out that the young man's ribs were broken. Killian realizes that he can't be impulsive and blame him now, since it was an even fight. The leader admits to the freshman that he underestimated him and that he himself wants to fight him, but not today. Sam reciprocates and says that he is waiting for him in the arena. Killian is amazed by his bravery and also looks forward to their battle. The leader also understands that even with surgery on Brad's tendons, it will take more than 10 days of recovery. And the exchange battles are tomorrow, and based on this situation, he decides to invite Sam to their team to replace their crippled comrade. And if the freshman agrees, then Killian, as team captain, will be able to solve some of his problems. Sam immediately agrees, because it only benefits him. He came today to challenge the elders, only to qualify for tomorrow's competition. And tomorrow he will participate on behalf of his professor Annabelle Prince. Killian, hearing about all this, falls into a stupor. He heard about Professor Annabelle and that Hiroji challenged her. Sam explains that his teacher was injured and is having a hard time fighting, so he wants to enter the competition on her behalf. The leader is satisfied with his explanations and he bids him farewell until tomorrow, saying that he will take care of the training side. Sierra didn't like Killian, with his eternal talk about principles and collective honor, and Sasha is already advising Sam to use a flying sword during their training. Mr. Levins abruptly remembers that his balloons were broken, and he rushes to Christopher to see if they can be repaired. He says that they cannot be restored and can only be recycled as material, but this will still cost money. As a good businessman, he charges a considerable amount for repairs, and Sam can only agree with it. Christopher also decides to show him a video of their fight, where again the commentators call him Soy Superman and the Ball. His friends immediately begin to tease him, calling him a silver sword along the way and telling him that it's time to refresh himself. Suddenly Sam himself begins to shout out that he is a silver ball and everyone around them is a silver ball. After watching the fight, Rector Ador says that he will allow the boy to participate as a temporary replacement. But nevertheless, he orders Helia to still remind the boy about one important aspect. Despite his kindness, if he had acted more decisively, the match would have ended faster, and he would have suffered much fewer losses. If he was so careful in tomorrow's match, he would certainly suffer. Ador thinks that nowadays people are not able to stand firmly on the ground, so they must be reborn as soon as possible. Only then will they be able to resist. And in the University Hotel of the University of Care, a meeting of students of the Indian Federation is taking place. The teacher tells the students that he has finally received a list of whom they will compete against tomorrow. 2 of them have been replaced. One of them is a girl named Sierra Khans, a second-year transcendental type. According to information this afternoon, she has reached the 18th level in the second-year dragon and tiger ranking. She is good in close combat. Her style is characterized by active and brutal attacks, and she has experience fighting hidden type masters. However, she is a replacement and doesn't represent anything major, the most significant change being Sam Levins. He is a freshman, an erudition class, a hidden type. The teacher interrupts the student with a mixture of exposing the freshman as a threat to them. The professor loses his temper and shouts that he's the only stupid one here and invites them to watch a video from today's match. He turns to a student named Azari so that she, as the owner of the hidden type, says something. The young man noticed that he deftly uses a flying sword and his range of action is very large. As for his mental attack, he doesn't think that his strength as a whole is great. It can be said that this is a formidable opponent and he will need to prepare carefully. The teacher believes that by overestimating the enemy's strength, they will be able to prolong their lives and become a nightmare for their rivals. And from now on, within half an hour, the professor needs everyone to come up with at least 3 different battle plans for this Sam Levins. He also needs options for who is best suited to fight him. In the end, he will personally choose who will have to fight Sam. Sam comes to Annabelle and tries to make excuses for today's fight and why everything turned out this way. The teacher gets up and begins to scold the student. She said that by doing good to the enemy, he only harms himself. If this was a real battle, then most likely Sam would have died. The young man tries to explain that he and Brad study at the same university. He couldn't just go and kill him with a flying sword, isn't that too much? Annabelle also wants to know why Brad didn't admit defeat, even when Sam hit his bow twice. His opponent knew that he would be kind to him. Besides, his opponent is a sophomore in 7th place in the ranking and has more experience. The girl wants to know what her ward was thinking about. She also wants to open Sam's eyes because of Brad. In these 1.5 years, 2 students became crippled. In addition, several dozen students were seriously injured. Mr. Levin should know that no one would definitely feel sorry for him. After listening to all this, the hero comes to the conclusion that he really needs to become harsher and more attentive. He thanks Professor Annabelle and promises her that he will definitely change. As soon as Sam walked out the door, Flaber decided to ask if she was too strict with the student, but it turns out that Rector Adore asked her to convey this, and she herself agrees with his words. Annabelle learns from Flaber that the last 4 clones remain. The girl orders to begin preparing for Plan 37 since she has little time left. The girls are in the educational building. Marie is worried about Sam's health, and Lily